the details wrong, but he pointed out that what's worse is that I had gotten the message of it wrong, and he said it came off as if I had been as if I had here yeah here as if I had made light of the learning of 1,000 pages of Talmud, which certainly was not my intent, and certainly was not Rabbi Yitzchok Bender's intent when telling over the Maisa. And so I'm gonna, here it is. I looked it up because he reminded me, check before you tell the story, and I apologize for making the error. כששיבחו פעם אנש בפני מורנת איזה אדם גדול במעלה, שצריך להגיע לעיר, ויודע 1,000 דפי גמרא על פה. So once people, Breslover Hasidim, they were before Rav Nachman, and they were praising very highly a person who was very well known because he was on the way to town and he knew 1,000 pages of Gemara by heart. Ana Moranat va'omar. Moranat, Rav Nachman answered, he spoke up and said, Oizer, v'hitkavnu al talmido Rabbi Oizer, he said, Oizer, his own student, Rabbi Oizer, Yachol litzok 1,000 pamim ribono shel olam. He's capable, Rabbi Oizer is capable of crying out 1,000 times, Ribono shel olam. Now, Rabbi Fleer pointed out, and I want to give him credit for it, he said it was clear when Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter gave over the story, because that's how the anecdotes and Theosophy Kodesh and all that information is collected, was from the oral tradition that was passed down by Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter Zatzal. So he said the point was that Rav Nachman wanted to make clear that 1,000 daf Gemara is wonderful, but the dagesh should be on not on what you've accomplished and that you've already have it, but the yearning and the desire to come closer to Hashem and to continue to move forward. And so that's the Ribono Shel Olam 1,000 times of the hours Hispodedus, which is like the engine of all forward motion. So in ruchnius and in learning and everything good. So the emphasis should be on continuing to strive rather than on having accomplished and saying this I have in my pocket. So I just wanted to make the correction, and I thank Rabbi Fleer very much for having pointed it out. Now, where are we? Let's see. We stopped, I think, at Hafatza, correct? Yes. So we're up to 21. Now, during the time that we have left to us, we want to finish out the last elements. Now, some of these are things that you do every day, and very soon we're going to get to, they're all things that you do every day, but the end of Seder Yom starts to reach across not things that you do in the order of the day, but concepts and ways of being that are with us throughout the day. Meaning it's not just a question of setting aside time to work or, focus on XYZ, but it should be something that's with us all the time. So where are we now? Kedusha Shivas Haneros, the sanctification of the 7 candles. What are the 7 candles? Well, they are the 2 eyes, the 2 ears, the 2 nostrils, and the mouth. They are the 7 apertures of the mind, which are called the 7 candles of the menorah. And they are, we'll say, our means of communication between the outside world and the inner world. And Rebbe Nachman placed a great dagesh, he placed a great emphasis on our need to make sure that we are being very, very vigilant with the input that comes in, so that we're not mitami v'shmanim, that we're not going to, even though it's almost Purim, go back to Hanukkah, so that we keep the holy oil of the mind and the menorah of the mind. It should be it should be pure and clean. And so we have this idea of keeping all of those, the sanctification of the 7 candles, which means basically the portals through which our spiritual self is in contact with the outside world. Yikadesh einav milastakel bara. What does it mean to sanctify your eyes? Well, Yikadesh einav milastakel bara. We should sanctify our eyes and not see things that are bad. And of course, there's different ways of talking about things that are bad. You have things that are bad that are mamash lo yafeh, things that are not inappropriate, let's say. And then we have bara, also the idea of being mekadesh the einayim, to sanctify the eyes to look in the good, not at people. meaning not to focus on the bad, not to focus on the negative. So we have different ways of understanding, not being mistachel b'ra, not to look at the bad. It means bad things, but it also means not to look for the bad. It's a mitzvah midivrei sofrim, ve'ebetuv Yerushalayim, to look for the good of Yerushalayim, and this really applies to Yerushalayim, Eretz Yisrael, Klal Yisrael, for all of the Jewish people, and every situation that Kadosh Baruch Hu sends us and orchestrates for us, to be looking always as we can for the good there, not for the negative. And so that is called Kedushas Einayim, but at the very baseline, it means you have to be careful about controlling the input. We live in a world where we're bombarded constantly by imagery that's really detrimental to our spiritual health. And we've become so inured to it. We're barely cognizant of it. We're so subsumed. And some people will say, well, why do you have to be so sensitive? We could just let it sort of flow over us. And the answer is, just because we become desensitized and we're not reacting doesn't mean that it's not affecting us negatively anymore. So we do have to be careful. And some people will say, well, maybe this only applies to men. And the answer is no. We say every day in Shema, Lo sasu acharei levavchem acharei nechem. The mitzvah of not following after the desires of the eyes means, however the outside world affects us negatively in our relationship with Hashem and our personal holiness. So it applies to everybody. It's a mitzvah for everyone. It's not just about men. And so everybody has to sort of have their finger on the internal pulse of, are my eyes taking in things that are not good for me to see? And so that's a cheshbon, that's a calculation that everybody needs to do for themselves. But, and it depends on your environment, and it depends on what your media consumption is. That's a big one. And always there's places to grow. And, even to think about someone like Rosh Shmuel Shapira, Zichrono Livracha, Rosh Shmuel Shapira, who he was one of the Ziknei Anash of the previous generation, one of the prominent Breslover Hasidim of the last generation, and he was so careful with his eyes. And he, even in Mea Sharim, for those of you who know Eretz Yisrael and who know Yerushalayim, so if you know the area called Batei Ungarin, he lived in Batei Ungarin, or at least later he lived in Batei Ungarin, and Batei Ungarin is like as deep inside Mea Sharim as you can go, and he used to walk around Batei Ungarin with his eyes closed. And what was there to see in Batei Ungarin? Rebbe Nachman says in L'Kutei Moran, if we properly guarded our eyes, we would be able to see Maros Elokim. We would be able to see divine visions. It doesn't mean necessarily having prophecy, but we would have pure and holy eyes to see things that are right now we're occluded from seeing. So for whatever that means, for everybody in their own level. So it's sort of like it's a trade-off. When we are affected, not when we are, but we are affected by what we see. And we shouldn't be surprised later if our eyes are not the holy vessels that we would like them to be able to see the hashkacha pratis, see Hashem's hand in everything, mamash see Hashem's shechina in the world, not to the level of prophecy and Ruach HaKodesh, but to see it, And Rebbe Nachman would say, we have also a dibur that if you say 40 days, right, it's a month of the 40 days. Again, I have to check. I shouldn't say I can't say without checking. So now I am afraid to say without checking, and not relying on my memory, especially when I'm so tired. But Hatzileni, the custom to say before Purim, the month before Purim, whether it's 30 days, it's the month of the full 40 days, I can't remember. I think it's the month, but I might be wrong. So, is to say, the custom to say, Hatzileni miklipas haman amalek, for the, for the month before Purim. So we have this very, this very sweet, not sweet, but powerful statement. What happens when we're careful to say it? Here, Siper Moranat Pramachas Berev Purim Tani Sester. 1 year on Tani Sester, right before Purim, because there was, of course, in Breslov they were keeping Purim de Prazim, not Shushan Purim, but the Purim for unwalled cities. Sa'akti Lashem Yizbarach. Rebbe Nachman says, Hatzileni miklipas haman amalek, No, that's not the one. This means he said. So he says, he says, but this is not the one I was thinking of. The Hatzileni Nami Klipas Haman Amalek. Reb Nachman says once I was in Tiny Esther, and I cried out to Hashem, save me from the klipa, from the evil force of Haman Amalek. And it was like mamash, as if Haman Amalek was standing over me and about to strike me with a motz barzel. But the piece I was looking for, this is my fault for not paying attention to the time change, is that it also says in Siyasa V'Kodesh, I wish that I could find where it is, Al HaMakom, because I don't have, I'm like an hour off of my regular time. But so anything that I had planned to take to check before I started, I didn't have time to check, so I'm sort of trying to catch up with myself here. But we have that if you say it, see, now I can't find it. If to say it before leading up to Purim, you could see Mordechai and Esther in the Megillah. Now, what does it mean to see Mordechai and Esther in the Megillah? I mean, you don't see Mamish or Mordechai and Esther in the Megillah. So what does it mean? Did I lose you? Did it come back on? Do you have sound now? The sound was spotty, or now it's good? Now it's back. Okay. So the ears have to be open to hearing the words of the wise. One of the 48 pathways through which the Torah is acquired is called Shmias Ozen, that the ears have to be open to hearing. And the Bali Musar, in terms of Avodas Hashem, so that means that you have to be receptive to being able to hear guidance and to hear Torah from those who, from those who have what to share. And that itself is a midah that has to be worked on, because, always is a sense of, well, maybe I know, and maybe, no, you have to purify the ears, and by listening to the Divrei Chachamim, and that's a way of preparing our ears for holiness altogether. How do you purify and sanctify the nostrils? So it's not just smelling nice things, that's not what it's about. Rebbe Nachman speaks about the taking the long breath of patience, right? Now, laharich af, let's just break it down. We have something that's called, Rabbi Nachman has a lesson on Beroges Rachaim Tizkor, that in a time of anger, you have to remember mercy. Now, the idea is, when you're prone to anger, that's called charon af. One form of getting angry is like you say, in the cartoons, you have like the steam, clouds of steam coming out of somebody's nose. They're infuriated. That's called charon af, the fury of the nose. And fury means like a person is fired up, right? And of course, we have the anthropomorphized parallel, which is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu, in his Chas v'Shalom, in his anger with us, whatever we call it, anger, he doesn't get angry, he doesn't have emotions. What appears to be for us his anger, to us it appears anger. So that's also called charon af. Now, charon af, again, think of this like the fury, the steam coming out of the nostrils. And then we have something called erech hapayim. Now, erech hapayim, among of the 13 midot of rachamim, right, the 13 qualities of divine mercy. So one of them is erech hapayim, is listed in the Parasha Kitisa. Now, what does it mean, erech hapayim? Well, erech hapayim literally means long apayim. Apayim, you could say panim, right? But actually apayim are nostrils because your af has two apertures. So erech apayim means long nose, right? It implies the long nose. Of course, it doesn't mean physically a long nose. It's that you take the long and patient breath through the nose and don't hurry to react. And that's called la'arich apo, to be patient, long suffering, right? For everything, al kol davar. V'yirachem al mi sheratzah lichos alav, and to activate the quality of mercy of what we call erech apayim. It means to say to activate my capacity to be patient and non-reactive, and give the person space to come back to themselves and stop doing whatever they're doing that's so provoking. V'yirachem al mi sheratzah lichos alav. So to activate mercy upon the person that I would otherwise want to be upset with and react to. And Rabbi Nachman has told us, although the truth is the shoresh of the concept is really elucidated very powerfully in the Tomer Devorah, which is the Ramak, Rav Moshe Cordevero's exploration of what we call the 13, all of the midot, but it starts with the 13 midot of Rachamim, 13 attributes of divine mercy, which are called the 13 midot of the qualities of the Keter. They're the uppermost qualities. And that's where, and that's the place of will, and we call this the place of Ratzon, that's the area of the Keter, which means that you have the capacity there to activate the highest part of yourself, and the sort of linchpin of the Midot is Erech HaPayim, it's there in the middle. The Arichas HaPayim, to be long, to take the long breath of patience, right? And activate mercy in the place where you'd like to get angry. That's called Barogez Rachim Tizkor. Now, the parallel effect is not only, it's not only a refinement of and a purification, sanctification of the nose, those two nostrils, but it's actually much more important than that, because in the activation of mercy, we draw down divine mercy for the whole world. That's called Barogez Rachim Tizkor. How am I supposed to get Hashem to activate his quality of mercy upon us when we're so provoking? Well, when I have an opportunity, when I have a reason to be provoked, and I make a choice, and I activate my quality of Yerchapayim, of being patient, so that has a parallel effect on high, and it's beneficial for the whole world. So that's an idea, that's a concept, and a fundamental concept that's explored at length in the Tomer Devorah of the Ramak. So sanctification of the two nostrils, take that long, deep breath of patience, and withhold, we'll say activate mercy. Don't withhold the anger, but activate mercy rather than anger. Right? That's the way we sanctify the two nostrils. Opiv yikadesh b'divrei Torah tefillah, and the mouth we sanctify through what? Through speaking words of Torah, through prayer. Shmiras dibrim asurim, being careful not to misuse the quality of speech. Ubazeh yizkel Shef Eloki, l'kedushas hamachshava. And that's the last point here, is actually coming full circle. The idea of sanctification of all of the apertures, right? Here, 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 and here, is not stam for itself, but because you have to keep your mind nice and clean. And those apertures are the portals through which the outside world is communicating with your inner world. And so if they're not kept in a fit state, everything gets muddied and everything gets occluded by negative influences. And so if we do as we should, and we sanctify the 7 candles of the menorah of the mind. So it says, Yizkeh, Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter, Hashem Yikom Demo, Yizkeh L'Shef Eloki. This makes us worthy of receiving divine abundance. U'lekedushas hamachshava, and of course the main thing is really the kedushas hamachshava, that our minds should be clear, that our minds should be holy, and be fit places for HaKadosh Baruch Hu's presence to reside, because the mind is the Kodesh HaKadoshim, the mind is the Holy of Holies of the human being. So it needs to be a fit residence, Now we go to the generalities, right? I mean, we're already in Kedusha Shivas Aneros again. Once we get past Chaf, right? Once we're past number 20, The last one is Hafotza, meaning that you have to spend time on that every day. Once we get past that, for the last elements, this is stuff that's supposed to be accompanying us all day long. Kedusha Shivas Haneros, the sanctification of the 7 apertures of the mind. So that's all day. Simcha. Yeh b'simcha tamid. V'yafoch kol minei yogan v'anachal l'simcha v'sason. Well, for anybody who is familiar with Rebbe Nachman's lessons, Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter is dropping on us. Every single one of these elements is at least several lessons tied together from Likutei Moharan, from different places, which at this point, because this is our last session, I'm not going to give you, if anybody's curious about which lessons each one of these is based on, send me an email. But Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter, very beautifully and with a lot of pshitas, just very simply and straightforwardly, he's tying together concepts that appear all over Likutei Moharan, and he's drawing them all together in order to build us a total picture of was meint Breslov Chassidus. What is Breslov Chassidus really all about? Simcha. Yeh b'simcha tamid. Person should be always happy. And like it says early in Sichas Haran, so you got to be happy all day. When you're happy all day, you can manage to do an hour of cheshbon nefesh, to do an hour of pouring out one's heart before Hashem in a way of we'll say to be contrite before HaKadosh Baruch Hu. A person who's happy all day for 23 hours can do that for an hour without damaging themselves. But the basis, the foundation of everything, has to be from the place of strong simcha, because otherwise the kinds of avodas that people like to do, they want to do. Something that came up last week when we were learning Sichas Haran, that it's like introspective, self-critical people tend to focus on the cheshbon nefesh aspect, on making this internal accounting, that part of Breslov Chassidus, and so they want to do a lot of these bodidus. But sometimes these bodidus, Rebbe Nachman said that that you did a good bodidus when afterwards you could cry for an hour, but afterwards you have to be happy. You come out happy because you've reconnected with Kadosh Baruch Hu, and you've come closer to him, and oz v'cheder v'komo, joy and strength is in his place. And so when you tap back into the source, no matter what state of Shiras Lev you started with, you're reconnecting with Hashem, and you're receiving a new dose of koach from him. And so when you finished, right? When you finished, bechia is Sofei Tevis, right? Is Rosh Tevis. The word bechia, weeping, is also b'shimcha yegilun kol hayom. B'shimcha yegilun kol hayom. In your name, they rejoice all day long. So it's like there are two sides of a kind of healthy, of the healthy relationship with Hashem, is that you could have the bechi, you have the crying, but you're also in a state of b'shimcha yegilun kol hayom. It's not that it's not two different states. It's one totality. There are times when I'm mishtapechet, there are times when I'm pouring myself out to Hashem, but the thread of simcha, because I'm confident that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is with me, and I know He's listening to me. So even when I'm b'chducha shel nefesh, I'm really in a difficult state, I always still have access to the Mekor HaSimcha, to the wellsprings of joy, because I can connect to Hashem at any time. I am connected naturally to Hashem at all times. Yeh b'simcha tamid, v'yafoch kol minei yogan v'anachal l'simcha v'sasa. That's a line that he's referring to, a lesson, very famous lesson, Sasa l'simcha yasigu, and that idea of transforming. It's not enough to just be happy, but you must force yourself sometimes to do this transformation of yongan v'anach, of our tendency to bemoan ourselves and to sigh and moan and groan. Transform that and make it into simcha. Meaning, it's not enough to sort of just distract yourself from feeling sad for a little bit, but rather we want to go through this we really want to transform the parts of ourselves that have a tendency to be depressed and melancholic. We want to force ourselves into this transformation, so that it's not just that you go to the wedding. In that lesson, Rebbe Nachman uses the mashal of, you at a wedding, and a person doesn't want to dance. He doesn't want to join in the dancing. So what he does is he stands against the wall, because he doesn't want to dance, because he's not feeling up to it. So he stands aside, and everybody is in the magal, everyone's in the circle of joy, and he stands to the side. And Rebbe Nachman says that's called nas yagon v'anacha, our tendency to the sighing in the morning. When there's a great amount of simcha going on, it moves off into the other part of the room. That's like when a person is upset about something, so then the friend comes knocking at the door and says, come, let's go out for a walk, let's go for a cup of coffee. So you're happy for the hour, right? But then you come back home and your melancholy is still sitting there waiting for you in the living room. And Rabbi Nachman says that's not the point, right? What you're supposed to do is, like at the wedding, you see the guy standing there at the wall, and you say, come, and you grab him. And you bring him to the Magal of Simcha. You schlep him to the circle of joy and transform him from the state of being down into the state of being joyous. And so we do that with a part of ourselves. It's a big avoda, it's deep avoda, to say, no, I'm not just distracting myself for an hour. I need to learn how to take my tendency to melancholy and literally transform it, not allow it to run away from me, but to grab it and have it become a part of the Magal Simcha. And this is the avoda of a lifetime. When Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter is talking about it, he's just dropping it on us. But he's speaking to Breslover Hasidim who presumably are familiar with the Torahs and the lessons and the tools that you need to be able to work this. This really mamash a lifetime. Yikabel hakol bi'ahava. What does it mean to be b'simcha? You have to accept everything from Hashem with love. Lo yipol ye'ush li'olam. Never give up. V'yichyeh v'yisamech et atzmo tamid b'nekudotav hatovot. And we have to learn how to give ourselves life and energy and make ourselves happy by focusing on our nekudas tovas, on focusing on our good points, in our ruchnias and our chavas shebesoch hatzoros hagashmias. Of course, he's referring here to a very famous lesson, Batzar Yechaftali, which is this idea that even when we feel like we're being pressed to the wall, HaKadosh Baruch Hu always provides for us many openings. Batzar, in the narrow place, Hashem, you opened for me. And it's avoda, like to focus on to always go back and learn how to work this work of a zamra, of finding my good points, focusing on them, never letting go of them, learning how to be mesamech myself with them, learning how to cause myself to be happy with them. And this is really like this avodas hasimcha is like, it's a whole life, right? So each one of them, maybe we should just do a course on simcha. Maybe the next course we need to do is just on simcha. But and all of the beautiful eitzes that Rabbi Nachman offers us for building simcha, I think that maybe that's the idea for the next course. But maybe we write to Chai Rivka, write to the office and see what they have to say. But I think it's about time. I don't think we ever actually did that. We've done lots of other stuff, so maybe that's a good idea to introduce you to the strong tools that Rabbi Nachman gave us for working on simcha. Maybe that's a good idea. So Yisameach tatzmo tamid mikudosav hatovos ruchnias rachaves shebesoch hatzoros begashmias, and to also within the physical circumstances that we're in, to learn how to focus on the places where Hashem is making it easier for us, where He's opened windows even though He's closed doors, so to speak. And notice that throughout most of this, I don't think, maybe once before, Yitzchok Breiter didn't refer us to a lesson in Likutei Moharan. But when it comes to simcha, he says, go back there. Go back to those two lessons and pay attention to them and go learn them again. So even though he's expecting us to know where that is, he's not leaving it to chance, because simcha is the basis, is the shoresh, it's the foundation of everything. Go back and learn Azamra, go back and learn Kuf Tzadikei. Even if a person chas v'shalom falls into terrible places, because we fall, we make mistakes, we sin. Person has to trust in the power of the tzaddik and start again fresh. And this is a direct quote also that a person when it says Yaschil b'chol pam mechadash, that's a direct quote from the Likutei Moharan, that every time a person has to start again as if he's never started at all, and as if he's never fallen. V'yamin ki kol nefilaso aisa leman yaschil mechadash, and he has to have faith in Hashem that every place where he's fallen is only in order that he should go through the process of renewing himself and getting up and climbing up again. And if I'll make the effort to start again, and I'm not going to give up, HaKadosh Baruch Hu will help me. I shouldn't go down to such places again. And of course, we have all the beautiful eitzos of all the beautiful pieces of advice of being making a habit of serving Hashem with melody and with joy and dancing and clapping. Clapping mitigates judgments. I'm not going to go into all of that right now. It's too much. But and when we're especially when we're doing mitzvahs and especially learning Torah and praying, that we should be filled with simcha mamash, overjoyed. So Breslovers are clappers during the davening. I'm not going to get into why, but one reason is because Rebbe Nachman has a beautiful lesson on Hamchas Kaf, that clapping mitigates judgments, and the reason he says there is because it's called la'achlala smola bimina, that you I could do it like this, or is that the left is brought into the right, and that's called it says the right. That the left should be brought into the right. That means to say all of this harsh stuff and the stuff that's difficult for us, and the places we get stuck, we force it into the place of Chesed. That's the right hand side. We sort of force it, and so that act of clapping, to encompass the left within the right, is a physical act that's emblematic of forcing oneself to stay positive even though things are difficult and challenging. And we can understand how that could be associated with the mitigation of divine judgments. Bifrat b'shas Torah tefillah. So, joy is a whole subject in and of itself, and I think that the point that needs to just be stressed is that simcha is an avoda that you have to do every day. It's like that's your whole day, 23 hours a day, and even that 24th, the hour of or the time of hisbodedus, whatever it is not a time for wallowing in depression. And people who have a tendency to depression, they have to be very, very careful about how to do their hisbodedus, because they have a tendency to drag themselves down further and be terribly self-critical and to wallow in brood. And so the hisbodedus should not be that hour of hishtapchus hanefesh, of pouring out one's soul and pouring out one's heart before Hashem, is not supposed to be a self-pity fest or a wallowing in melancholy. It's certainly not the point. And so we all have to be careful about that. Just to make it clear, I have a student who asked me, so cheshbon hanefesh, how should I do cheshbon hanefesh? I said, do you have a problem with depression? She said, my whole life. I said, oh, okay, so let's bear in mind that what you would like to do during your Shas Hisbodedus, during your Cheshbon Hanefesh, is probably the exact opposite of what you ought to do during that time. Because if your tendency... Hi, it's Chappy. How is it now? Freda, how is it now? It's okay? All right. So if your tendency is to be too hard on yourself, so sometimes the hours hisbodedus isn't supposed to be what's wrong with me, but actually, Ribbono Shalom, please help me to be to see my own nekudas tovas, and that I should work the Torah of Zamra, and that I should not focus on my bad, and that I should realize that I'm connected with you, and I should be simcha b'simcha tamid. And you understand, you have to. The hisbodedus is not supposed to be anything other than recognizing what the Nakuda is where you're off, and to try and fix it, not to play into the place where you're already messed up. So, word to the wise. Okay, tshuva. Tshuva is a mitzvah to do all day long, every day. Yisbonein b'chol machshav v'dibur ma'aser shelo limtzo behem remazim. L'rei nashuv l'Hashem yisbarach be'emes l'ischadesh b'avodas Hashem yisbarach. A person has to do teshuvah. And one should contemplate every thought, speech, and action, one's own, to see where HaKadosh Baruch Hu is speaking to me and sending me messages in order to awaken my soul to turn to Him and return to Him at all times. And I should really do it genuinely and to refresh myself in serving God. That's actually the first lesson of Likutei Moharan, is the idea of listakel b'asechel sheyesh b'chol davar. And also, we have a lesson Nun Vav in 56, is also the idea of zechira, of really paying close attention to the thought, speech, and action of every day, and realize that HaKadosh Baruch Hu is communicating with me, and He's always calling out to me, return to me. And if my ears are open and my eyes are open, then I'm going to constantly feel like I'm being summoned to return and to never forget about Hashem, to always yearn to come closer to Him, and that's something that He's constantly sending me. He's constantly sending me communications via my own thoughts that spring into my head, the words that come out of my mouth, the actions that I do, and of course the way in which I come into contact with other people. For those who are familiar, this is a direct quote from the 6th lesson of Likutei Moharan. Every single line here in Seder Yom is just a weaving together of so many different places in Likutei Moharan, in the Sichos also, but mainly in Likutei Moharan, where Rebbe Nachman goes on at length about every single one of these concepts and how to work them. So he says, if you want to do teshuvah, you have to be willing also to go through sometimes experiences that are very humbling. And that's a necessary part of the teshuvah process, and to learn how not to react and to just accept the fact that sometimes the Kadosh Baruch Hu tells me, you'd like to come close, and I know you have good aspirations, but something, you're not quite holding there, and you have to be willing to go through the process and be patient through the process of teshuvah. This is a very cleansing experience when we have to go through this kind of humbling. Sometimes it's just because we're not ready to come to live up to the aspirations that we have. Sometimes it's because other people actually put us through some pretty humiliating experiences, or not humiliating, but we'll call them humbling. And as long as we realize that everything that's happening is coming directly from Hashem, we're able to accept it as part of a necessary spiritual cleansing process, then it really helps us to be able to do teshuvah properly. And that's called Yiskapu Kolavanusov Yisapchulis Chuyos. That's really how it's possible to go through a transformative teshuvah on an everyday basis. This is not something you wait for Elul for. This is not something you're waiting for Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur for. This is something that we do all the time. Somebody says you a word out of place. And by the way, raising children I have found to be like one of the most wondrously effective teshuvah processes, because as a parent, it's a very humbling experience to raise kids. They don't mean necessarily to be mitchatzef. They don't mean necessarily to reflect back to you all the places where you still have so much work to do, but they do it anyway, even if they don't mean to do it. And so when we embrace it and we say, look, if the child was mitchatzef, was not exactly, spoke out of turn, or was rude, so no, they have to, they need an education. However, I also need an education. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent me that kind of a message, it's because I also have work that I have to do for myself. And so it is not only in our relationships with family members, but of course where we go. We go out into the world, we go to work, and we ride the train, and we go into stores, and we deal with, government offices, and I don't know, whatever it is that we have to deal with. Like, all that stuff is a Kadosh Baruch Hu's way of bringing us closer to Him. And sometimes it's a little, you have to accept that sometimes it's with a little bit of a patch and punim. It's true, but as long as we accept it as part of the necessary, it's a necessary part of the tshuva process. So it does the work it needs to do. Ahavas chaverim, 24. Loving your friends. Now, Ahavas chaverim, Yahav kol Yisrael. Gotta love every Jew. Especially fellow Chassidim, who, because you share a common spiritual language, and you're able to support each other and receive from each other and give to each other in ways that, even though you have beautiful relationships with other Jews, when you have a common spiritual language of people who are makorv to the tzaddik, so that's something that's like a bond that's really an incredibly powerful bond. What does it mean to be a good friend? What does it mean to have a good friend? You've got friends you go for coffee with, and you have friends that you go shopping with, and you have friends that you might go on vacations with. But we have, like, the real friend of the soul. That's a friend that you talk about the tachlis with. The tachlis means what life is really about, And so to have friends with whom you can talk about the tachlis, that's really what it means to be a friend. And we know that that's true. Because, you can have a friend who, you think about it like I can have a friend who, when something happens to me that's really really causes me a lot of strain, So that friend is going to just validate me. They're going to say, oh, it wasn't you, and you're great, and I love you, and that's really nice. But then there's another friend who can talk to me about the tachlis, and who has the capacity to be able to help me to see that what happened is from Hashem, and that it was necessary and good for me. And so that's a different kind of friend. And we love our first kinds of friends, the friends who validate us and accept us, and they're right there with us. And then we have a very deep relationship with those people from whom we can hear about the tachlis, that we have that kind of communication with each other. And so those friends we love all of our friends, we love everybody, but to be on the level of being able to communicate about the purpose of life, about what life is all about, that's called the tachlis. So that's already of a different degree. And it's amazing because the way it works with a real friend of the soul, is one day you're that friend's mashpia. Like one day you have what to tell her about the tachlis, and so you're shining. Rebbe Nachman uses this language. It's in Torah Lamed Dalet, I think. So you're shining. Your holy good point is shining into her. She needs your good point to shine into her. And so at that moment, you're her mashpia. You're her Rebbe. And then the next day, you need her good point to shine into you. She's got a quality of patience maybe that you don't have. She's got a quality of acceptance maybe that you don't have. And so at the time when you're in need, she's got a shining good point that is shining into you. And at that moment, she's your tzaddik, and she's your Rebbe, and she's your mashpia, and you're receiving. And that's the deep spiritual sharing of genuinely good friends. Yeah, this is from Lamed Daled, that every single Jew has some point of goodness and holiness that's not in the other person. And so our relationships one with the other is very much like the foundation of our relationships are really on this point of, I have something to share with you. At this moment in time, tomorrow could be something different, but at this moment in time, I have something to share with you. Where is what found? The friend? Where are you going to find the friend? Or where are you going to find the lesson about this? The lesson where this is discussed is the 34th lesson of Likutei Moharan, if I'm not mistaken, and the lesson is called Cherpa Shevra Libi Vanusha. That's the opening verse. That's the opening verse. Vatem tiyuli mamlechas kohanim v'goy kadosh. If I'm not mistaken, it's lesson 34. That's my memory. Okay, let us go on. Mincha. Oh, now we're back to the regular schedule. Yispalel kanal. Don't forget to daven. And daven the way that we spoke about Shacharis, which means b'mesinus, nice and slow, with good focus, happily and joyfully. Now, Rav Yitzchok Breiter here is relying on a very beautiful lesson. He's assuming you know a very powerful lesson about Mincha from Reb Nosson in the Gutei Halachos, and this idea of the davening Mincha, which became Hasidic practice to daven towards the end of the day. There's Mincha Gedola and there's Mincha Ketana. Mincha Gedola is the earliest time that you can pray the afternoon prayer. That's early in the day, midday, closer to midday, somewhat past midday. We'll say like recognizably past midday. That's really what it means. And so that's the first time. It's called Mincha Gedola. It's the big Mincha. Why? Well, basically we have this idea of mitzvah haba liyadecha al tachmitzena. If you have the opportunity to do a mitzvah, when the time comes to do it right away. Don't let it sit. You might forget, or you might not manage to do it. So we have this idea that there is an advantage to davening mincha, to praying the afternoon prayers nice and early, as soon as it's possible to do so. And that's the practice among Bnei Yeshiva for the most part, is to daven. In yeshivas they tend to daven mincha gedola. Now, then there's also mincha ketana, little mincha. Little mincha, I'm not going to get into practices of people who tend to daven mincha, who pray the afternoon prayers after the sunset and so on. I'm not going to go there. Let's just say it is at whatever your definition is of when the day ends. The prayer that's later on in the day and closer to the time of the end of the day. Now, is there an advantage? It's very interesting because it became common among many Hasidim to pray mincha ketana, the later mincha, as opposed to the earlier, whereas you would think halachically the priority should be that you pray as early as possible. Why wait until the end of the day? Well, Reb Nosson gives us a deep, deep understanding in, I think it's Mincha I think it's Hilchos Mincha Hey. I'm pretty sure that it's the fifth section of the laws of Mincha in Likutei Halachos. And in it, he talks about what happens when you do this great act of chesed, of remembering your Creator as the day is about to close, and what happens with this act of chesed, which kind of gathers up and picks up all of the mitzvos and all of the avoda of the day, and brings it up as as like an offering at the end of the day, because mincha, when it's the later part of the day, is always like you have to stop whatever it is that you're doing and make sure to pray mincha. So that's actually a very powerful, brings about a very powerful rectification in the world, because it's a time, what we call it a time of dinim, because you're so preoccupied for the most part, and night is coming. And so the fact that I make a choice and I stop doing whatever it is I'm doing, which is essentially the middle of my day, I stop everything, and I, it's like mincha is almost always like for mothers is crunch time, and to stop and set aside everything else and just focus on Hakadosh Baruch Hu, to remember Hashem. This is actually a very powerful act that helps to uplift all of the avodas of the day, because it's the transition time, mincha ketana, not mincha gdola, into the next day serving God, because it's going to be the evening soon. Haba acharav la'avodas Hashem yisbarach v'b'chinas aliyah hashalem kol hakarbanos kulam. Aliyah hashalem kol hakarbanos kulam, meaning that mincha is a way of like finalizing all of the korbanot of the day, because it's the end of the day. And he's making references here, Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter, Hashem Yikom Demo, to the power of the end of the day and the state of purity one enters into when as the day is closing, because we have the purification process ritually in the time when we used to keep the laws of Tum and Tahara. So the closure of the day can be, we call that Harev Shemesh, when the sun sets. So it's a way of finalizing a person's purification process in many cases. I'm not going to go into all of the details, but that's what he's referencing. And we have two more things to talk about. Now you say, next one is Rosh Hashanah. So Rosh Hashanah is something you have to think about all day, like every day. It has to have you have to have something to do with it all. I mean, you're thinking about Rosh Hashanah all year long? Yes, Breslover Chasidim, we're thinking about Rosh Hashanah all year long. Rosh Hashanah. כל המקורבים לצדיק האמס צריכים להתאסף יחד מקום אחד על ראש השנה, להספלל באיסקשוס לצדיק, על ידי זה מקבלים ממנו הארה נפלאה ותיקון מסקרבס גדולה. He says it's very, very vital. Anybody who considers themselves close to the tzaddik האמס, he means Rebbe Nachman, have to get together in a single place for Rosh Hashanah, to daven b'iskashus l'tzaddik, to daven with the intent to bind themselves to the tzaddik, and this brings them a very, very big illumination spiritually, and repairs the souls, and brings them closer to Kadosh Baruch Hu in a very powerful way. Now, of course, the fact that he doesn't designate Uman as the place of gathering, it's because when Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter was alive, it was already impossible to have the kibbutz. The Rosh Hashanah gathering could not happen in Uman anymore. And so Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter, as I've mentioned before, was was one of the heads of the Polish Hasidim, of the Breslover Hasidim, who had established themselves in Poland after the Communist Revolution. And so, and he was filled with yearning and longing. I mentioned this before, and I'm sorry I didn't get it together and to bring it and put it out to you. The special tefillah that he had composed about a tefillah and a poem of yearning to be able to go to the kibbutz in Uman, but lacking that. Where are the places where Breslover Hasidim met and still meet up, even if they're not in Uman for Rosh Hashanah? Well, you have our American group, who before it was possible to get to Uman for Rosh Hashanah, I believe they were davening on Lee Avenue. They were davening for Rosh Hashanah also on Lee Avenue, in the Breslover Shtibel, and we had the gathering in Miron that was established for Rosh Hashanah Tefillah after the big Breslov Shul in Mea Shearim was built. Of Rav Tzvi Rosenfeld, so among others. But he really worked so hard to establish the shul. So the shul in Mea Shearim became also another place for a kibbutz. And even after it was possible to get to Rosh Hashanah, to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. So we still have the kibbutz in Meron. We still have a Rosh Hashanah gathering at the shul. There's still davening. The davening in Rosh Hashanah in Mei Sharm is overflowing. It's massive and very powerful. And there are people who come from all over Israel, all over the place, to daven specifically in the Breslov Shul, the main Breslov Shul in Mei Sharm, because I forgot who would say it's the place where Shem Rabbeinu, where the name of Rebbe Nachman is expounded and his teachings are expounded, and so it's a place of iskarvus to the tzaddik, of gathering together to delve into and be bound up with Rabbi Nachman's path and his message. So Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter here doesn't specify women because in his time there was no possibility of getting to women. Things happen for us in the schus of the tzaddik on Rosh Hashanah. It doesn't happen all year long. Kol inyani hu Rosh Hashanah. Go mein zach is Rosh Hashanah. My whole inyan, everything that I'm focused on and everything about me has to do with Rosh Hashanah. And it's possible for people who are gathered together, for Chassidim who are gathered together for Rosh Hashanah, to draw down the light of Rabbi Nachman and share it with the world for generations. It's really very wondrous. Rabbi Nachman passed away 200 years ago. Right now, already more than 200 years ago. And the fact that Breslover Chassidus has had this incredible, otherworldly, supernatural resurgence is something that makes no sense whatsoever. The fact that the kibbutz stayed alive, the fact that the Sfarim were preserved, the fact that it's grown to the extent that it's grown is really not explicable by any human means. It really cannot be understood. The fact that here we are 200 years after his passing, sitting here on the internet, sharing the Torahs, going through the lessons from Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter, going through Reb Noson's Torahs and the stories and all of the things that we learn is so not muvan me'elav. It really makes no sense whatsoever. Show me another Hasidic group that has gone through this degree of resurgence. There is no such thing. It is unprecedented. It makes no sense in any natural way, because when a Hasidic group starts to die out, which the rest of our Hasidim certainly were doing, so and like what Stalin didn't finish and what the communists didn't finish, like Hitler, like between Hitler and Stalin, Yimach Shemam, there was really nothing left. And from this tiny little sarid, this tiny little remnant, mainly in Eretz Yisrael, but also in America, it's unbelievable what came back to life. It's just such a tchias hamesim. And it makes no sense. So when Rabbi Yitzchok Breiter just said, and he was lost, we lost him in the Holocaust, but for him to say, it's something that is meir dore doros, right? Something is happening through this Rosh Hashanah gathering that keeps the light of the tzaddik in the world. And we see, Lamaisa, it's true, it happened. It's not something that is subject to any kind of, there's no question about it. L'chein tzrichim l'shaber kol haminios shel parnasa v'mamon, v'tirda v'kavod. And therefore, the Rosh Hashanah gathering being so important as it is, one must break through all obstacles, no matter what form they take. Whether it's parnasa, that it's going to mess up your livelihood, like they're going to fire you from your job or something, or mammon, you don't have the money to pay for the ticket, or tirda, it's too much, it's like takes too much out of you to go do this journey, or kavod, if you go away for Rosh Hashanah, your father-in-law is gonna kill you and get you crazy for a whole year long if you go away for Rosh Hashanah. The chayotze, and all of the other various possible manias, possible obstacles. Lavo, la kibbutz, a Rosh Hashanah. One must do it. I was in the cab the other day, and I don't know why, but the cab driver was asking me all kinds of questions. We have this midrasha, and we opened a school, and so in Yerushalayim we have this school, and he starts asking me, what kind of Hasidim are you? Breslover Hasidim? I said, yes. He said, should I go to Uman? He's like a not religious guy. He's like, I said, well, are you going for the Chavaya? Why are you going? Why do you want to go? So he said, everybody goes. So I said, well, you've been everywhere else, right? You've been to Prague, and you went to here, you went to Berlin, and he's like, yeah, because Israelis like to travel. So I said, what? So Uman is just another place, but that's not what it's about. He says, I know. He said, it's a tikkun for the nefesh. Like, you're not going there to shop. He says, but people have chavayot, I said, it's true. It's a nice experience, but, you have to realize if you're going to go, 100% go. But realize what you're going for. You're not going stam l'tayel. You're going there in order to do something very specific for your nefesh. That's why you're going. Now, why was I telling you this? So he said, of course, like many people, he says, the business about going away for Rosh Hashanah. And I said, listen, my friend, I didn't say that to the character. Right? Listen, you have, I said, all Hasidim go to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah. Why does everybody pick on Breslov? It is the minhag of Hasidim to go to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah. That's the way it is. You're supposed to be with your Rebbe, Rosh B'nai Yisrael. You're supposed to be with the person. All Hasidim know that you're supposed to be with the person who, for you, is the Rosh, is the person who's Misader your Rosh. So your head, puts your head on straight, and because you want to straighten out the head of the year, that it should be in order. Now, Breslover Hasidim, of course, but like all other Hasidim, Gera Hasidim go, Baba Hasidim go, Belzer Hasidim go. Everybody goes to the Rebbe for Rosh Hashanah. Why? How come only Breslov is a bad name? And last but not least, Eretz Yisrael, the land of Israel. Kol Yemei Chayav Yizgageya. Throughout a person's life, every day of a person's life, he has to be filled with yearning, vispalel, vishtadel. He has to daven and also make actual, practical, physical efforts. Lisyashev be'Eretz Yisrael, to come and settle in Eretz Yisrael. At the very least, you should come and visit, and at least once in your life, walk 4 cubits in Eretz Yisrael in order to receive the higher portion of your soul that you require. And that will help you to have arichas apayim, because the quality of Eretz Yisrael is patience. And I'm not going to go into which lesson he's taking this from, but it's a nice long dibur. In any case, emuna, faith, and patience is the quality of Eretz Yisrael. And you see sometimes that Eretz Yisrael, since its quality is patience, dafka everybody in Eretz Yisrael is also impatient. Nobody's got time for anything. We're on the rush. But that's just because this is a place where it's possible to come to the fullness of Erech HaPayim, the fullness of patience and long-sufferingness and tolerance. So it's the place of Avodah, and it's just like Eretz Canaan, the quality of Eretz Canaan, the original name of Eretz Yisrael is Eretz Canaan, is Hachna'ah, is submissiveness before Hashem. And you say, oh my goodness, but Israelis, we're all so prickly, everybody's got such an attitude. Now, I don't mean in any lashon hara. If anything, I'm speaking about myself. But that's because it's the place of potential for achna'ah, and so therefore the klipa upon achna'ah is a little bit chutzpah, But that's the place where you can go. V'leilech midarga ledarga. Rabbi Nachman said, a person who wants to be an emes ish chayil ba'oras Hashem. If you want to really serve God with a lot of energy, and ish chayil means to go mechayil el chayil, to keep on moving and striving and growing. That's why he says midarga ledarga, to keep going from level to level. That's what it says here in the text. It means michayil el chayil, to keep on moving and striving. That's the quality of Eretz Yisrael. So he says, even if you only come here, just walk those Dalet Amos. When Rabbi Nachman came he came here with Reb Shimon. So when he came to Eretz Yisrael on his pilgrimage, they landed in Akko, and they went through such incredible trials and tribulations until they finally got here. They almost didn't make it. And you can read about it, in Shifchei Aran. But when they got here, Rabbi Nachman walked a couple of steps, and then he looked at Reb Shimon, and he's ready to go back. We can go back now. Meaning he did his Dalet Amos, he walked his 4 cubits, he got what he needed. Reb Shimon said, wait, 1 second, we came all this way. We're not going to go to Kivrei Tzadikim, we're not going to see the holy places, we're not going to pray here. Yeah, okay. But in terms of the spiritual tikkun, the active spiritual repair, coming to Eretz Yisrael is the essence of it. So, of course, you want to be here all the time, It's not just a question of coming for a quick visit, but Mamshich alav Klalius HaKdusha, the place of Eretz Yisrael, is where the well springs of holiness, like the Sfasema says, are closer to the surface, And it's the place where, if 10 portions of holiness were given to the world, but nine portions of the 10 are here, and especially in Yerushalayim Kodesh. And so therefore there are distinct spiritual advantages to coming and also to staying. Now, what's amazing, I want to finish to the end of this, and I'll tell you a story about something that happened once when I came to the States. And this is the Ikar Nitzachon de Kedusha, to come and overcome all of one's obstacles, to come and actually settle in Eretz Yisrael, and to continue always to move and strive forward. This is what it means to really win, to like come out on top in this world. Hashem Yisbarach Yazor Lanu, Hashem should help us. Shizkeli lech b'derech HaTzadik, we should be meriting to follow in the pathways of the tzaddik or the emes, of the emunah. We should do it with integrity and honestly and truly and with faith. Lamshich oro aleinu, to draw the light of Rebbe Nachman's greatness as is tzidkus upon us. Al kol Yisrael, al yidei zeh nizkeh legulas haguf hanefesh, that through activating and being, just like following the path. We have a path laid out here. That if we'll just do what he said and follow his advice, we're doing everything that we need to do to be able to prepare ourselves and be worthy of the Geulas Haguf HaNefesh, the redemption of the body and the spirit. Amen v'amen. Speedily and in our days. Amen v'amen. Shekoyach. Now, I want to tell you one quickie story. I was invited to participate in a Shabbaton a couple years back. It was Elul time, I think, and BRI brought me in. And so I went to the Catskills. For those who were there, Freda, maybe you were at that one. It was like the super Hamish one. Do you remember that one? Were you there for that one? I don't know if that was BRI or if that was just Fried. Either way, it doesn't matter. So there was so I went to the Catskills for this Shabbaton, and they had me there to work with the women. And of course, it was like, that's right. It was that one, or it was a different one. I don't remember. It was the super Hamish one, because we had a couple of them. Okay, so when I say the super Hamish one, it was like there was like a van of families who came from Tosh, from Montreal, from the Tosh community. There were people who came in from Kiryas Yoel. There were those who came in from Williamsburg and from Borough Park. So it was like the American Breslov contingent that come more from the very staunchly Hasidic world, Chassidish, and they're educating their children in the enclaves of staunch Hasidim, but they're also Breslovers. Now, there was a whole group of people who had been raised Satmar, and the husbands became connected to Breslov. And the women wind up going along for the ride, And so it was an experience for them because they brought me in, and I'm of a learning style that's very, very not accepted in Satmar. Rav Yoel Zechron Levracha, Rav Yoel Teitelbaum, the Satmarov, did not hold from women opening the Sefer and learning inside the books. And so, my whole way of doing things is not the way that they were educated. It's very different. I mean, the women almost fainted after the meal on Friday night when I said we're going to sit down and learn. So I said to one of the women, Kens betten dein Mann für das Episode Likutei Moharan, or if the andere side, can you go ask your husband from the other side of the Mechitza to bring over Likutei Moharan because we need a sefer? And she blushed. You understand? It's a very, very different world in terms of women's education. It's very holy, very beautiful, and very different from the way I was educated and what I do. But it was with a lot of mutual appreciation. Now, the funny thing that happened was we were sitting at the table, and I don't remember if it was the night meal or maybe Sunday morning. I don't remember. But I remember one of the women was, she was talking about, they were talking about letting the husbands go to Rosh Hashanah and what a chiddush it is for them, how difficult and how challenging, and it was Elul time, they were preparing soon. And so everything was an adjustment for them. That these husbands of theirs who had been raised Satmar suddenly want to go out in the night to go do hispodidus. They want to go to the field, and that they're starting to learn all these firm and talk about concepts that they've never heard of before. It's unheard of in the world. And so the women all had this major adjustment, and some of them, were more into it, and some of them less. And it was a very interesting group. And then one of the women said, we were raised in Satmar. Like the next thing you know, they're going to want us to go to Eretz Yisrael or something. And she looks down on the table, and they had printed up. Somebody among the group had printed up a beautiful little trifold booklet of tefillas from the Kutei Tefillot of Reb Nachman of the holiness of Eretz Yisrael, coming to Eretz Yisrael, to come to, and you don't understand, this is so outside of the framework that they come from. And we were sitting at the table, she said, next thing you know, they're going to tell us that we got to move to Eretz Yisrael or something. This is like a total mind bender. And then sitting, she looks down and there, she said, look, oh my goodness, look. She picks it up, look at this. And I said, yes. And would it be so terrible? Eretz Yisrael, no one's asking you to be Zionistim. No one's asking you to become a Zionist. Eretz Yisrael is the Eretz of the soul. Eretz Yisrael is the Eretz HaKadoshah. Of course you have to always yearn and long to come to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, no question. So that's, you can understand when someone is not already naturally in this kind of mentality. It's like, what? Every minute of every day, I should always be filled with the yearning? See, Breiter says it was eye-opening, right? I love them. I love the Heimische. I get along so well with them. We have such a good time. So everyone should have a good week, should have a beautiful month, and should have a delicious Purim. I'm coming to the States. I'm traveling tomorrow night. And if you're not on the regular mailing list for students, so I'm going to be in Los Angeles for a couple of days, and then I'm going to be in DC area for Shabbos, for Parshas Zachor. I'm going to be in Camp Mill. So I'm going to be in LA for 3 days, and then teaching in Pico Shul on Tuesday night. That's this week. Tuesday night, Wednesday night, another shul. I don't even know where I'm going. And I think either Wednesday or Thursday morning, I have a morning shiur. If you're on the mailing list for my students, if not, send me an email and I'll add you for the schedule. So there's a couple of things going on in LA. Then I'm going to be in Camp Mill for Shabbos, and and then afterwards I'm in New York. So in terms of shiurim in New York, for those who are in the New York area, I'm teaching. Some things are sort of like closed for designated groups. The open thing is on Monday at 1 p.m. I'm teaching at the main group in Lawrence, for those of you who are familiar with at Lori Martin's house. And on Tuesday evening, we're gonna do a get together early in the evening, because after that I have to go fly home at the Ohel. Be'ezras Hashem, we're gonna learn together some asicha from the Rebbe and have time to daven, because I can't be in New York and not go to the Ohel. So will it be on tour anytime? Usually they record. When I'm there, they usually record at the main group. So minastam. Okay. After Purim. Happy all the time. And have a beautiful week.